All right. Again, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. And to remind everybody, the meeting is being recorded and we'll end up posting it online with the Office of Open Government. The meeting today is certainly open to any member of the public to listen into, but there's no scheduled time for public comments. If something goes awry here and I can't immediately figure out a technical solution, I'll send out an email and we'll just have to reschedule the meeting. And I guess throughout, please keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. And I don't think anybody has video on right now, but again, I suggest going audio only in order to kind of make the bandwidth issues easier for everybody. And with that said, I'll go ahead and do a roll call of the advisory group members and then visiting attendees and CCRC staff, just to make sure we get that in the record. So to start off, Don Brayman, are you on the call? I believe so. Okay, don't see Don. Paul Butler.
I'm here.
Great, great. Helder Gill. Don't see Helder. Laura Hankins.
Here.
Okay, Dave Rosenthal.
Here.
Alana Suttenberg.
Here.
Kevin Whitfield.
I am here.
Great. And for other visitors, I don't think we have Seema on the phone. And I don't see, looks like Nishant, are you on the call now?
Yeah, sorry about my tardiness. Hi, everyone.
No problem. Happy to have you join. And Katya Semyonova. I believe Katya's on, unless she got booted off the call here somehow. Okay, we'll circle back. She was on the call earlier, so I'll confirm that a bit later.
She just sent me a text. She's having trouble with WebEx. Can I answer for her? I can answer for her.
Sure.
She is here.
Sure.
She can hear, but she chooses not to talk to you all. I don't blame her.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. And we have on the call all the CCRC staff, which is myself, Richard Schmeckel, Margarita Brunstein, Janu Park, and Rachel Redfern. And with that, we will go ahead and jump into just a few announcements and then see what discussion there may be on both the advisory group materials, the comments we got back, and the ones outstanding. So in terms of announcements, first I wanted to alert everybody that we've just posted on the DCHR website the vacancy announcement for a senior attorney advisor position. Later this week, I will email you a blurb so that you can forward that to any of your networks. This is a unique position, and trying to find a good fit can be tricky. So really appreciate your help in helping to just kind of recruit some good applicants. And so look for that email again in the next day or two, and if you can, just forward it to anybody you know who might be interested. Second, the written comments are due on report 69, the current outstanding report on penalties. The due date is Monday, February 15th, so a little less than 2 weeks now. And, as before, there's no need to repeat any prior comments. If there's one or two of particular emphasis, please do. But, everybody's points are, already in the record generally. And, some of these, again, to the extent that they, some of the underlying elements might have changed to an offense, maybe that makes it more relevant to raise a point as to the corresponding penalty. But, we're at the staff level working very hard to both kind of review, respond to the latest round of comments, and do a kind of a deeper cleaning to make sure materials are up to date. So we're working on that. And let me see. I guess one thing I'd flag, and maybe it'll come up later in today's conversation, is that part of the supplementary materials in memo 41 that went alongside the penalty recommendations in report 69. One of those is labeled Appendix G, and it doesn't present new information, but the manner of presentation I think is very useful. It kind of puts side by side in a more condensed way the Superior Court data that we, the analysis that we previously given you all, the last in time data for basically the 10-year span, 2010 to 2019. It puts that alongside the corresponding RCC offenses and their penalty recommendations. So you can kind of see in one place how things line up. Now, obviously, it's a tricky task. It's an art, not a science, because we're dealing with apples and oranges, and so I wouldn't say it's a perfect manner of presentation, but it really does, I think, kind of help to focus where differences may lie between the RCC recommendations for penalties for particular offenses and the corresponding penalties that we see coming out in current court practice. So I'd encourage everybody to check that out too as you consider penalty recommendations. Last announcement is to say, to note that the next meeting is on March 3rd, first Wednesday of the month as usual. The agenda will be written comments we received back on this outstanding report 69, but also will include consideration or discussion of any procedural issues around the final vote. And I'm going to note for the record too, Don Brayman has just joined us, and I just moved Don into the panelist queue as well. So welcome, Don. So again, at the March 3rd meeting, we'll have a chance to kind of discuss more as a group if there are questions about the procedure. I don't have much to say at this point, other than, again, we are planning to hold the vote on March 24th. At this time, I think there'll be just one vote on whether to recommend the full package of reform recommendations to the council and the mayor for their legislative action. The 5 advisory group members who are voting members can choose to vote for or against or abstain from that package. And per the agency statute, there needs to be at least a majority of the voting advisory group members to move it forward. And so, yeah, I'm happy to handle or address any questions or concerns kind of about the procedure, but that'll be on the agenda too for the March 3rd meeting. And I think as we get closer, I'll have a better sense of any other details, but I expect at this point it'd be fairly straightforward. I just very much hope we don't have any conflicts or technical difficulties on the March 24th date. And yes.
Just one
Dave.
quick question, and I'm not going to hold you to this, but do you know how much in advance of the March 24th vote you think you'll be able to get us the final version of what we'll be voting on?
You bet. Our goal is to have it no later than March 10th, 2 weeks beforehand. We may be able to do better than that. It's, obviously we want to dot I's, cross T's, and really try to make sure that that final version is, not just substantively, but also, in appearance and minor things are cleaned up. So I've been trying to go back through. I know some of you have sent, at times different emails about typos or sometimes even formatting issues, and so we're trying to systematically go through and correct those. So Again, look for it on or by March 10th, a couple weeks before the vote.
Thank you.
Yep. And I should say too, look, we'll be presenting the final report. Along with that, we'll do the same thing as usual. Like there'll be a it's been the Appendix D, D1, D2, D3. In what you receive next time, there'll be a D4, Appendix D4, which includes, again, kind of an itemized set of responses to the various comments, this last batch of written comments we received. So, and there'll be a red ink version, although the red ink version isn't something to vote on since, the kind of prior versions disappear. But just for your own, use and ours, and kind of tracking, responses to this last set of comments, there will be a red ink version as well. So it'll be basically the same packaging, basically the same breakout of documents. There'll be a few new appendices added, which aren't for voting purposes, but for instance, part of our statutory requirement is to address statistics, and so we will be bundling as an appendix some of these statistics we've already provided, so that some of the analysis that was in Memo 40 previously came out in December, well, that'll get turned into an appendix to the final recommendations so that that whole package kind of goes together with that background information. But nothing new there in those appendices. Again, this is material you've seen before. We just want to make it part of the package that goes. Good. Well, if there are no other announcements or questions on that, let me go ahead and turn the conversation to the agenda items. We first up, have the first draft of Report 68, which we received comments back. I sent just, I believe, over the weekend, as well as the background memos 39 and 40, 40 including this kind of latest update on court statistics that I believe I mentioned last time. The findings in the end were almost trivially, but different from anything we had found before, covering the same time period. The difference is that this last batch of statistics analyzed the sentence that was issued by the court, the last in time entry in the sentencing records instead of the first in time record. So this has more updates. It reflects any kind of quality of control changes that the court might have found and remedied. It might have changes to sentences based on subsequent, appellate rulings. Again, overall, it hardly shifts the data to any appreciable degree, but we wanted to check that and present that information to you all. So, that's there in mainly the contents of Memo 40. Again, it's broken out into two parts. We also did an analysis at 72 hours after imposition of the initial sentence, because that is the time period we gather from the court and conversations with them that they engage in a kind of quality assurance, quality control process over their entries, the clerk's entries. So we also checked at that time point. For all practical purposes, I think you can ignore that. Again, very few differences, and I think to the extent it's useful, you should look at the last in time entry. That's what we're going to be using, going forward. That's what we use in the Appendix G that I mentioned before. They're all very similar, but we're just going to go with the last in time entry in any of our analyses. All right, so staff again kind of went through all the, or has has initially gone through, I would say, and reviewed the comments we got back Friday and distributed over the weekend on Report 68. At this time, we don't, I think everything was pretty clear what was being asked for or recommended. So we don't have any questions for the full group, but let me open it up and see if there are items that, again, we're in the comments on Report 68 that any advisory group member would like to raise. All right. Don't hear anything, and so that's fine. Obviously, I think everybody's fully engaged. And again, you know, at this point, right, we've been on almost all of these issues, you know, gone through them sometimes, you know, multiple times, and sometimes the comments are turning into comments on comments, and we're further along in this process. And, you know, again, very much appreciate the time everybody put into this. I know it was a lot of material to process, and, you know, feel free to reach out to me if there are any additional questions or concerns you have. But again, we'll be working off this last set of comments as we assemble the final version, and we'll be with the final draft, or the voting draft, be attaching also the same kind of appendix, which shows how we handled the recommendations that were given on Report 69.
Ilana, I had one comment. I think this is something that we'd actually discussed in a previous meeting as well. PDS had a comment about sexual assault, making effective consent a defense rather than affirmative defense. And I think I'd indicated previously that we agree with that, and that we still agree with that, with PDS's comment on that, that it should be a defense rather than affirmative defense.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And you know, I'm all for agreement between USAO and PDS. So yeah, you know, if anybody has revelations that they would.
We agree with U.S. Attorney's Office agreement with PDS.
Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely. It's just look at that.
Well, then OHE should chime in as well, that we're in agreement.
Excellent.
Celebrate this moment.
We should. And you know, not going to get too ahead of myself, but I think that, you know, we will certainly, you know, look favorably on the advisory group's joint agreement on the issue. So thank you for that clarification. Anything else? Otherwise, I want to also then kind of turn to the new materials that are out there in Report 69 and see if there are questions. But before we do that, just want to check again. Any last you know, items to discuss on the comments back on Report 68? Hearing none, we will move forward. Okay, so Report 69, again, this went out mid-January, and I don't know to what extent you all may have had the time to look at that as you were scrambling to kind of review some of the comments in the earlier report, 68. But, you know, 69, the major piece is, again, updating that chart, which shows for each RCC offense, what is the recommended penalty. And so that's the main item, I would say, in that package. There are a number of other penalty-related changes, though, that, you know, we recommend. I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't know that there's anything more to really add beyond what's there. Obviously, on sentencing matters, there's tremendous range of considerations and complexity. I've referred, you know, in the past, and again, this last report, we referred to the ALI's sentencing recommendations, and the court data, and also the sentencing commission's rankings. All of these are kind of relevant data points as to appropriate penalties. Again, this is an area where there's going to be reasonable differences of opinion, and I look forward to any remaining comments that there may be. Again, this is largely repeating. We highlighted in the documents where there were changes. There were very few as to the classification assignments. Yeah, if you have feel that the classification is wrong for a particular offense, it would be very helpful to know, again, kind of what specifically it should be assigned instead. Higher, lower is of some use, but also knowing kind of more specifically what the ask is would be great. As well as, any rationale as to why it is more like the offenses in this bucket of, this class versus the other comparable offenses. And again, I would commend to everybody looking at the Appendix G and kind of seeing how things do or do not line up with current court practice. And definitely there are significant deviations in a few places. By and large, the penalty recommendations account for all or nearly all of the sentences we see in current court practice. But again, there are some significant deviations as well. So welcome comments there. Any questions about those materials, how to navigate them, or the meaning of any of the recommendations?
When we get to it, this Dave, I'd like to walk through the penalty enhancement in robbery, because I think I don't see where the commentary relates to the text, and we've had some debates about it in our office.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and turn there then. So,
so I can tee it up for you if you like.
You bet. And is there a particular page? I'm guessing this is in report 69. In the robbery.
Pages 33 and 34.
Okay.
And then there's commentary on, where's the commentary? Commentary later on.
Yeah, the following pages, yeah.
Yeah.
30, 35, 36. Great. Sure. As everybody kind of looks to find that again, report 69, really starting on page 34, or I'm sorry, 33, there were several changes dealing with the penalties for robbery, and then some corresponding commentary that were part of the package. So go ahead with your question or concern, Dave.
Okay, so the question is, or the issue, and it may be that I'm just misunderstanding, because like I said, there's some debate on this in my office. But when you look at the penalty enhancement on page 34, that is E5B, two classes when the actor commits the offense under subparagraph B3A or subparagraph C1A by recklessly displaying or using what is in fact a dangerous weapon, right? So if you commit, say, a C1A and you have a dangerous weapon, it goes up two classes. So when you look at C1A, you get that the person basically robbed somebody, causing bodily injury to the complainant. Now, notice when you look at those two terms, that nowhere in the penalty enhancement does it say that the displaying or using of what is in fact a dangerous weapon is responsible for the injury in C1A. And when you go to the commentary says, paragraph E5 provides two penalty enhancements for second and third degree robbery. that are the same as paragraph E4, except there are more severe penalties for committing the robbery by inflicting a bodily injury or significant bodily injury by recklessly displaying or using what is in fact a dangerous weapon. And to receive the higher enhancement, the dangerous weapon must directly or indirectly cause the bodily injury or significant bodily injury. So I see that in the commentary. But like I just said, when I look at the penalty enhancement, it just, to me, the text just seems to read that as long as you recklessly display a dangerous weapon, and under C1A, the person robbed them, causing bodily injury. So what am I missing? Or somebody can walk me through that.
Sure. And Dave, I'm not exactly sure, and it may help to paint out maybe a hypothetical that is kind of at stake here. Is your concern that, which is I think a concern that OAG's raised before, about whether the weapon has to be itself used to inflict the bodily injury, or whether the, for instance, display of the weapon that then causes the person to step backward, trip, fall, crack their head, whether that would also count? Is that kind of what's at stake in your question?
No, because I think footnote 4, resolves that. It says, for example, if the defendant displays a gun during a robbery and the gun's display causes a complainant to step back, trip, and fall, the enhancement would be satisfied. My point is that in the commentary, it says, except that there are more severe penalties for committing the robbery by inflicting the injury by recklessly displaying or using the dangerous weapon. And what I'm saying is I don't see that linkage in the enhancement language. The enhancement language to me seems to read that as long as you've got a gun and the guy's injured, whether or not it was as a result of footnote 4, the enhancement would apply.
And I'm going to give maybe a possible response.
Let me give this example. And it's just off the top of my head, so maybe it won't fit. But let's say 2 people rob somebody, one has a gun, and the other person who's robbing them slaps them, inflicting injury. It seems to fit the penalty enhancement. The guy had a dangerous weapon and somebody was injured under C1A. But the commentary seems to say that the gun somehow has to be related to the injury. And that's the disconnect that we're seeing.
Right. Okay. And I'll take a stab at a response, but I will also let Janu on the line think too. He's our robbery expert here. But I think so yes, there is still a connection in the sense of, we have the by that is doing the work here, that word by in the penalty enhancement, that it has to be meet the C1A or B3A method of means of committing the robbery. And to do that, it must be that effect, in this case, the bodily injury must be caused by recklessly displaying or using the weapon. Now, when in a 2-person scenario, with an accomplice, it gets trickier. And I'm, again, the accomplice, I think it's kind of a washout, right? If an accomplice and to a principal who, was using the weapon, the fact that one used the weapon while the other used their fists, and that we end up with a net result of a complainant with a bodily injury, that again, at the same time, there was the display of a gun, but that wasn't linked, directly linked, or I guess you would say also indirectly linked to the bodily injury. Is that kind of what's at stake?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Janu, go ahead.
Richard, yeah. No, Dave. Yeah, it's a good point. Like, substantively, we want this enhancement to apply in the way that's described in the commentary. Make sure, am I unmuted? I am unmuted.
No, you're good.
And yeah, just looking at this penalty enhancement language again, yeah, I can see why, we wanted it to include that. I can see why this language on its face doesn't make it as clear that requisite degree of injury, whether it's regular bodily or significant bodily injury, has to be caused directly or indirectly by displaying or using the weapon. So I can see why, your reading of that enhancement, it sounds like it's a little bit broader than I suppose we intended. So I think, Richard, we can just review this and see if, we can come up with maybe even just a slight tweak to how this is worded, just to clarify that we want still that causal connection between the weapon and the injury.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think, again, while we want a causal connection, right? It doesn't have to be the direct or indirect allows it to be a kind of a weak causal connection, connection. Again, the display might lead to, cause some series of events that results in the bodily injury. So we'll try to finesse that.
But this is Ilana. How would you ever cause bodily injury just by displaying a weapon, not by using a weapon? I mean, it seems that we would want liability for somebody who's like waving a gun and a person submits on that basis, even if the gun is not actually used to cause any kind of bodily injury. So I don't think that I support the limitation that we're talking about.
Well, so you would get.
They were talking. I thought that was footnote 4. For example, if a defendant displays a gun during a robbery and the gun display causes the complainant to step back, trip and fall, and suffer an injury from the fall, the weapon penalty enhancement would be satisfied, even though there was no gunshot.
That's right. And if someone merely displays the gun, points it at someone, but doesn't actually cause injury, so it's just like a threat of, hey, give me your wallet or else, then the enhancement under 5A2, which is just displaying or using a weapon, that one would apply, and there'd be a one class bump. When you actually cause the injury by using or displaying, then it gets this 2-class bump.
Are you basically saying that like the causal nexus you're talking about would only be under, I guess, E5B, where there's the bodily injury, and it wouldn't apply? Like you wouldn't need that same kind of nexus for the other enhancements?
No, I think we would, but I think Janu's point is where the brandishing is essentially a threat, right? Under the way it's described on 3rd degree, to that, somebody's gonna get hurt, somebody's gonna suffer bodily injury, or perhaps even death, right? Where the brandishing is connected causally to that, which I think is probably a pretty low burden. If somebody, brandishes in the course of a robbery the or other dangerous weapon, that would satisfy it. So yes, there's a causal connection, but it's to a kind of the broader, not bodily injury, but simply was this a communication that somebody's going to get hurt? Does that make sense?
So just so I can be clear, we're talking about kind of requiring that the bodily injury be kind of caused by the displaying or using of the gun just under, I guess, kind of for purpose of 3rd degree robbery, just for C1A.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and again, what's at stake here, I think, is it's the difference of a 2-class bump versus the 1-class bump. That is, we wanted to give the higher penalty where, again, a dangerous weapon was used. It may have actually resulted in only a bodily injury or perhaps a significant bodily injury, but this is a general approach that we've used, not without some comment from you all, but it's a kind of an approach similar to how ADW works in that, and frankly, what we see in some of the survey, public opinion surveys we did was right at the bottom end, slight injuries, if they're inflicted by a dangerous weapon, are treated, significantly more severely than the what turned out to be a minor injury. On the other hand, when there's a serious bodily injury or something like even death, right, that is inflicted, the fact that there was a dangerous weapon involved has hardly any effect on the severity. So it's like it's not the kind of usual way of thinking about kind of a proportionality that we see, where it's graduated and consistent. Instead, the involvement of the dangerous weapon seems to have a disproportionately large effect on how severity is assessed for small harms, because I think on the understanding that intuitively it could have turned out to be much, much worse. The danger, the threat was greater. And again, at the top end, though, it's also largely washes out the effect of the weapon, because in fact there was a serious bodily injury, death, some such, in which case again, the use of the weapon, a dangerous weapon as compared to fists or some other means doesn't matter. So that's the underlying rationale behind the recommendation here, and it shows up elsewhere too in assault. It is, again, I know, not without some have commented against that. I don't know if it's useful to kind of take that on more, but that's what we were trying to get at here, and making the distinction between where the weapon is actually, causing the harm, versus there's weapon involvement to a lesser degree, but it doesn't, result in the injury. That's where we dial it back to just one class. Dave, in the end, does that kind of clarify the?
Yeah, no, yes, it clarifies it. So basically, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. OHE may propose some language to make that linkage clearer in 5B, and if we don't, hopefully you can. But that was the issue. It wasn't
okay.
I was fighting about what was in the commentary, as much as saying that I wasn't, that people were reading this provision differently, the 5B provision differently in my office.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Other questions or points that folks would like to raise with the group this morning? And if not, I'm happy to keep it a short meeting. Okay, well, as you continue to review the materials, feel free to reach out if there are, again, kind of questions on the meeting. Please, always welcome. Again, the more specificity, the better in any kind of written comments. And yeah, if you have particular language that you'd like to see instead, or again, a particular, a different penalty classification, that would be appreciated. With that, I think we'll go ahead and call it a meeting. Let me just kind of remind everybody again, March 3rd is going to be our next meeting. The comments we get back on this report 69 will be on there. we'll have at least a short discussion too of kind of procedures or any questions about kind of the final vote and wrapping up this package of reforms. And we will hopefully again by March 10th, we aim to get you the final voting draft and move for the final vote on the 24th. So with that, thank you all for joining on today, and take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.